You click on citizenship, actually click on services, and then click on citizenship, and then click on naturalization test, and then choose the new test, and you will find it. So there's a vocabulary list of words for reading, words for writing. There is some overlap in between them. So that's the reading and writing test, is one sentence each. You get up to 3 chances to successfully read a sentence and write a sentence. So as long as you get 1 correct, it doesn't have to be perfect. They'll accept a few spelling errors. The idea is if I handed it to you and you looked at it, could you tell what the person was trying to convey? Okay. So they're not that picky about spelling as long as the meaning of the sentence is clear. Okay. There's an exemption for English. If you are over on the day you file your application, these are mailed in, so on the day they receive your application by mail, you are at least age 55. You have reached your 55th birthday. And you have held permanent resident status for at least 15 years. They used to fudge it and say as long as you got there by the day of the interview, you're okay. That's out. So you have to meet both requirements by the time you file your application. So if somebody comes in like, oh, I'm really nervous, I don't know if I know enough English to do this. Well, if they said that in English, you'd say, your English sounds really good. But provided, let's say they're talking to you in Spanish, and they say, gee, I'm really not sure I can get through this in English. And you look at their green card, and you're like, well, you've had this for 14.5 years, and you're already 57. You know, in 6 more months, you'll be qualified to use a translator. Maybe you should wait 6 months and then apply. So keep that in mind. Just let people know it's an option, but you have to have the full 15 years of permanent residence, and you have to have the full age of 55 years or more when you apply. Similarly, there's another rule. If you've been a green card holder for 20 years and you're at least age 50, then again, you can use the English language exemption. Okay? So if you don't meet those criteria, then the only way you can get an English exemption is if you have a serious disability that hampers your learning, your communication in some way. So if I have had my leg amputated in a car accident, for example, okay, I will not be qualified because that does not affect my brain, it does not affect my communication skill. Okay? But if I've got in some way like Alzheimer's, or I've had a stroke, or perhaps I have a severe schizophrenia that's not well controlled by medication, so I can't focus and concentrate, then I might be eligible for an exemption. So it has to be a disability that in some way affects not a physical disability, but something that affects my memory or concentration or communication. So I might be very intelligent, but I have a severe communication disorder, so that the word that I'm thinking of is not the word that comes out of my mouth. Okay, well, I might be able to get an exemption there. Okay, but I had a young man who had very severe cerebral palsy, and was you know, if you looked at him, you think, wow, this kid's really disabled. You get the sort of spasticity, couldn't hold a pen, and you know, it was very difficult to speak, but he was really sharp. And he went through his whole interview in English. I mean, he kind of stuttered a lot, but the officer gave him time to respond, and he answered all the questions, and he took the history test and everything. So it's not about physical disabilities. It's about disabilities that impair your memory or your communication. And so if somebody is going to ask for a disability waiver, there's no age requirement. But there's this whole form that has to be filled out in incredible detail by the doctor. They want all these medical records. And so it'd be best if they actually had an attorney assisting them. And I've done 100 and I don't know how many disability waivers, and they're a huge pain in the butt to prepare. But if you properly document the disability and keep prodding the doctors in more detail, more detail, more detail, okay, there, good, then it can get approved. Okay, but you know, Mrs. Lee is old and has poor memory, please excuse her from the test. Doesn't cut it, okay? They want to know what tests were done, what's the diagnosis, how did you arrive at that diagnosis, how long have you been treating this person, are they on any kind of medication that might improve the situation, are they still impaired even with the medication, okay? So you get the idea. So, Any questions about any of that? Okay. So, what do I do once I've figured out that I am qualified? Okay. Well, then I would want to actually fill out an N400 form, and when I'm done filling it out, which we'll talk about in a second, when I'm done filling it out, I want to mail it to the address indicated here. This is the new filing address. They just changed those last month, and I'm expecting huge screw-ups as they adjust to the new system. But I would think in the next month or two the kinks would have been ironed out, and so hopefully you won't, your folks that you're helping won't have to deal with that. Okay, so with the N400 form, I need to include a copy of the front and back of my green card, a check or money order for $675 to the Department of Homeland Security. Ideally, I would want my full name and green card number written on the check, on the front of the check. If I'm over age 75, I don't have to pay the fingerprinting fee of $80. I only have to pay the $595 application fee, which when I first started doing citizenship applications was a $95 application fee. So that was back in 1995.
But service has improved sixfold since then, right?
Oh yes. Yes. No, it's still. I mean, it's not a crazy fee to charge to become a U.S. citizen, but it is a lot of money for some people. If the household is below the federal poverty line, and you can document the income of every person in the household and the expenses of the household, and it appears that they don't have any money left over at the end of the month, and they're below the federal poverty line, you can get a fee waiver. It's just really hard to document. It's harder to get a fee waiver than just to get a disability waiver. So it's really a pain, but it can be done. So if somebody asks, do I have to pay this fee? I say, well, how many people are in your house? 5. Okay, what's the household income? $33,000. Nope, too high. Way too high. Okay. So you can actually have a chart of the federal poverty line. And Judy, it's not the 125%. Okay, it's not the same as the affidavit of support. It's the actual federal poverty line. They're real strict about it. So you can actually print out that chart. Just type in Federal Poverty Guideline 2009, and it'll spit out, like, for this many people in the household, this is the limit. And if they're below that, you may actually be able to get a fee waiver. But you have to document the income and expenses of the household and each person in the household. It's really painful. Yes?
Is that based on sort of time? Like, do they go back and investigate your whole income?
No, they're looking at your current income. So if both breadwinners in the household just lost their jobs 2 months ago and they just got approved for food stamps, then they would look at the current situation. But the documentation might be lacking because it takes a couple months to catch up, you know, so it might be difficult to document the current situation. But if they're getting unemployment benefits and food stamps and that doesn't push them over the limit, if you can believe it, some people getting purely government assistance are over the federal poverty guideline and have, quote, too much money to get a fee waiver. It's crazy, but we've had people turned down for that reason, whose only income was supplemental security income because they're disabled adults. It's strange, but true. Okay, so generally you're going to want to check for $675. If the applicant's at least 75 years old, then you need to check for $595. Or, in either case, you could try to do a fee waiver. If they don't take the fee waiver, they mail the whole package back to the applicant, fee waiver and all. Okay. You also need 2 color photos, passport style. The old style you had to turn to show your right ear. The new ones are just like a passport photo, just looking straight at the camera. 2 inches by 2 inches square with a white background. Walgreens does them, lots of places do them. Nothing special about them. You want to write the person's name on the back of the photo and their A number, which is their green card number, on the back of the picture. If you do that,